The European Trading Companies, 1600 CE to 1763 CE. The European Trading Companies. India became the destination for several European powers which fought for control over Indian trade and resources. The first to reach India were the Portuguese, who established settlements in Goa, Daman and Diu in the early 16th century. They were ousted from most of their possessions in India because of competition from the Dutch and the British. After intermittent wars and an agreement with the English, the Dutch East India Company gave up all claims to India. The Dutch East India Company. The Dutch East India Company was established in 1602 CE in Netherlands. The company conducted trade with Asian countries such as India for silk, textiles and spice. The Dutch East India Company established trading posts in the Malabar coast and Coromandel coast in India. The company was more interested in the Indonesian islands, though they had a flourishing trade in India. After several wars and an agreement with the English East India Company, they gave up all claims to India to concentrate wholly on the Indonesian islands. The scene was now clear for the English East India Company, who were easily the most ambitious European power. The English East India Company. In 1600 CE, Queen Elizabeth I granted the East India Company the monopoly to trade with the Eastern world for 15 years through a charter. It was a private company run by a board of directors. The company made huge profits by buying Eastern goods and then selling them at high prices in the European market. In 1612 CE, the English East India Company EEIC set up its first factory in Surat. The company then sought permission from the Mughal Emperor Jahangir to set up factories in all parts of the empire. Jahangir granted them permission to trade in Surat on the west coast and Hooghly in the east. These and other locations on the peninsula became centers of international trade in spices, cotton, sugar, raw silk, calico and indigo. Soon the company established factories in Ahmedabad, Agra, Mausalipatnam, Madras, Patna, Belasore, Dhaka and Hooghly, and fortified Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. In 1639 CE, the British established a trading settlement in Madras. They fortified it and named it Fort St. George. In 1668 CE, the company got the island of Bombay from King Charles II, who received it as a wedding gift. He married a Portuguese princess. In 1690 CE, a British trading settlement was established and fortified in Calcutta. It was named Fort William. Madras, Bombay and Calcutta became the headquarters of the British settlements in the southern, western and eastern regions. Each of these headquarters, known as presidencies, was placed under the charge of a governor. From the beginning, the objective of EEIC was not only to have free trade in India, but also to maintain a monopoly. In 1717 CE, Mughal Emperor Farrukh Siyar granted the EEIC the right to carry on duty-free trade in Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. The company made enormous profits. In the course of time, the company began to interfere in the local politics of the Indian rulers for territorial, monetary and political gains. This interference soon turned into active involvement, and by the middle of the 18th century, the company laid the foundations of the British rule in Bengal. The French East India Company was founded in 1664 CE to compete with the British and Dutch in India. It was a government-controlled company, and the French government dictated its policies. The company established itself in Chandarnagar, Mahe, Karaikal and Pondicherry on the eastern coast and Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. Dupleix, the Governor-General at Pondicherry, played a major role in the expansion of French power in India. Carnatic Wars. An intense rivalry developed between the British and the French to establish a trade monopoly in India. Taking advantage of the decline of the Mughal power and the unstable political conditions in the country, they fought 3 wars to establish their supremacy in India. These wars are known as the Carnatic. In 1744, a war broke out between England and France in Europe. This war spread to India and the 2 East India companies clashed with each other. As the war ended in Europe, Madras was restored to the British. Meanwhile, Dupleix decided to play a more aggressive role in the Carnatic. He planned to use the armies and resources of the local Nawabs and Rajas to serve the French interests and oust the British from India. In 1748, the French power in Carnatic was at its height. The British, however, wrested this power due to the bold plans made by Robert Clive. He managed to capture Arcot, the capital of the Carnatic, and besieged it. Thereafter, the British had control over the Carnatic and French ambitions in India were thwarted. The Third Carnatic War was an extension of the 7 Years' War in Europe. The British had gained control of the rich province of Bengal after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. The French were handicapped by a constant shortage of funds. They were decisively defeated in the Battle of Wandiwash in 1760 CE, and soon they lost all their possessions in the Carnatic. The superior naval power of the British was one of the most important factors in their success in India. The British company was also financially stronger than the French. The British company was a private company, free from state interference. The British settlements were larger and better fortified. The British also had the advantage of capable rulers like Robert Clive. The British realized the weakness of the Indian rulers and used it to their advantage. After having eliminated all their rivals, the English East India Company embarked on an era of wars and conquests. By the beginning of the 19th century, the company became the unofficial governing body of most of India.